The doors to the throne room were massive. They stretched up so high that Taewon couldn't see the top. The material was something he'd never seen before. It looked like crystal but moved like water, shifting colors as he walked past. His boots made soft sounds on the floor. Each step echoed in the enormous space. Commander Taewon had seen many strange things in his 15 years with Earth's diplomatic fleet. He'd walked on planets with purple skies. He'd breathed air that tasted like honey. He'd met aliens with 6 legs, no legs, and everything in between. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. The Earthian Empire was the most powerful force in this part of the galaxy. Their technology was so advanced it seemed like magic. Their ships moved faster than light without engines. Their cities floated in space without supports. Their people lived for thousands of years without aging. And now, Earth had finally been invited to meet their ruler. Queen Velcia sat on a throne that seemed to be made of frozen lightning. She was tall, taller than any human. Her skin was pale blue and seemed to glow from within. Her eyes had no pupils, just swirling pools of silver light. She wore robes that moved on their own, flowing around her like smoke. But the most unsettling thing about her wasn't how she looked. It was how she made Taewon feel. The moment he entered the throne room, he felt her presence in his mind. It was like someone had opened a door in his head and walked inside. The feeling wasn't painful, but it wasn't comfortable either. It was intrusive, personal. He could feel her looking through his thoughts the way someone might flip through a book. Around the throne stood dozens of advisors. Some looked like the queen, tall and glowing. Others were different species from across the empire. There was a being made entirely of floating geometric shapes. Another looked like a tree with eyes growing on its branches. A third was just a ball of light that hummed with a low frequency. All of them were watching Taewon with intense interest. "Welcome, human," the queen said. Her mouth didn't move, but Taewon heard her voice clearly inside his head. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time, like listening to a symphony and a storm together. "You are Commander Taewon of the vessel Horizon's Edge. You speak for Earth." "I do, Your Majesty," Taewon replied out loud. He'd been briefed that the Earthians could communicate telepathically, but he preferred to use his voice. It felt more real, more grounded. Earth sends its gratitude for this audience. "We hope to establish peaceful relations between our peoples." The queen tilted her head slightly. It was a disturbingly human gesture coming from such an alien being. "Peaceful relations," she repeated. "Yes, we have observed your species for some time now. You are young, primitive by our standards, but interesting." Taewon kept his face neutral. He'd been called worse things in diplomatic meetings. "We have much to learn from the Earthian Empire." "Indeed." The queen stood up from her throne. She was even taller than Taewon had thought, at least 8 feet high. She descended the steps slowly, each movement graceful and deliberate. "We are curious about humanity. You are not the strongest species, not the smartest, not the longest lived. Yet you expand quickly. You adapt easily. You survive against odds that would destroy others. Why?" The question hung in the air. Taewon could feel the queen's presence pressing deeper into his mind, searching for the answer before he could give it. He tried to organize his thoughts, but it was like trying to hold water in his hands. Everything he thought she saw. "I see your daughter in your mind," the queen said, moving closer. "She, 5 years old. She has your eyes. You think of her often. You miss her." Taewon's jaw tightened. "Yes, Your Majesty. This mission has kept me away from Earth for 2 years. Attachment," the queen mused. "This is common among humans. You form bonds. You care about individuals. Even when those individuals are weak. Even when they slow you down. Why do you not simply optimize? Remove the weak, strengthen the strong. This is what we do. This is efficiency. With respect, Your Majesty, we don't see our loved ones as weaknesses." The queen stopped directly in front of him. Up close, she was even more intimidating. Her silver eyes swirled faster, and Taewon felt a sudden pressure in his mind, like she was pushing on something inside his skull. "I want to understand this. Your emotional attachments, your inefficient choices. Tell me, human. Answer me honestly." She paused, and the entire throne room seemed to hold its breath. "Who is lovely to you?" The question caught Taewon off guard. "Lovely?" "Yes, who do you find lovely?" "Who matters to you? I want to understand what drives your species. What makes you fight so hard to survive when logic says you should surrender? Answer me." Taewon opened his mouth, then closed it. This wasn't a casual question. He could feel the weight of it. Everyone in the room was watching him. This wasn't just about him anymore. His answer would represent all of humanity. It would shape how the Earthian Empire saw his entire species. He thought of Gia first, obviously. His daughter with her bright laugh and her endless questions. But was that the answer? Was it just about family? He thought of his crew, the people he'd served with for years. He thought of his parents back on Earth, growing old in their small apartment. He thought of friends, neighbors, teachers, strangers he'd met once and never forgot. The Queen's presence in his mind grew stronger. She wasn't just listening to his answer. She was experiencing his memories. He could feel her sifting through his past, pulling up images and feelings he hadn't thought about in years. She saw his childhood friend Hyunwoo, who had died saving their crew during a training accident. She saw Bo-Ra, the old woman who ran a bookshop near his house and who had taught him to love poetry. She saw his first commanding officer, a stern man who never smiled but who had written him a letter of recommendation that changed his life. But it was more than that. Through the telepathic link, the Queen was seeing more than just Taewon's personal memories. She was seeing something deeper. Human history, human nature, patterns of behavior that repeated across cultures and centuries. She saw soldiers carrying wounded comrades through battlefields when it would be faster to leave them. She saw doctors working themselves to exhaustion to save lives they'd never profit from. She saw strangers jumping into rivers to save drowning children. She saw humans doing inefficient, illogical, beautiful things for no reason except that it felt right. The Queen pulled back slightly, and Taewon gasped. He hadn't realized he'd been holding his breath. She looked at him with those swirling silver eyes, and for the first time, he saw something like confusion on her alien face. "You have not answered my question," she said quietly. "Who is lovely to you, human?" Taewon took a deep breath. "That's a complicated question, Your Majesty." "Then give me a complicated answer." The throne room was completely silent now. Every being in that vast space was focused on this moment. Taewon realized that his next words would matter more than anything else he'd ever said. Taewon's mind drifted back to Earth. He couldn't help it. The Queen's telepathic touch was pulling memories to the surface like bubbles rising in water. He saw Seoul in autumn, the streets covered with red and gold leaves. He saw Gia running through the park, her small hands reaching up to catch falling leaves. She was laughing. That sound, her laugh, it was the most beautiful thing he'd ever heard. But was that the answer? Was loveliness just about his daughter? The Queen's presence in his mind pushed deeper, like she was saying, "No, dig further, there's more." He remembered the day Hyunwoo died. They'd been training in a simulation pod, practicing emergency procedures. Something had gone wrong with the systems. Real fire instead of simulated fire. Real vacuum instead of simulated vacuum. The pod had been failing and there were 6 people inside. Hyunwoo had been the closest to the manual override. He'd stayed behind to open the doors while everyone else escaped. The pod had depressurized before he could get out. Taewon had been one of the people Hyunwoo saved. He remembered Hyunwoo's face through the window of the pod, calm even as the air was being sucked out. He'd given them a thumbs up. His last act had been to make sure they knew it was okay, that they shouldn't feel guilty. 3 seconds later, he was gone. Why had Hyunwoo done that? Logic said he should have saved himself. He was young, talented, and had a bright future. The others in the pod were older, less skilled. But Hyunwoo hadn't calculated value. He'd just acted. He'd seen people who needed help, and he'd helped them. Simple as that. The Queen was watching this memory. Taewon could feel her analyzing it, trying to understand. He felt her confusion. In her world, this made no sense. Sacrifice without gain. Loss without logic. More memories surfaced. Bo-Ra, the bookshop owner. She'd been in her 70s when Taewon first met her. Her shop was tiny, just 3 rooms stacked with old paper books. Nobody bought paper books anymore, everyone used digital readers. But Bo-Ra kept her shop open anyway. She said books had souls that screens didn't. Taewon had wandered into her shop one day when he was 16. He'd been upset about something. He couldn't even remember what now. Bo-Ra had taken one look at him and handed him a book of poetry. "Read this," she'd said. "It won't fix your problems, but it'll remind you that you're not the first person to have problems." He'd gone back every week for 2 years. Bo-Ra never made much money from him. He was just a kid who couldn't afford many books. But she always had time to talk. She'd ask about his life. She'd recommend stories. She'd make tea and listen to his teenage complaints without judgment. When he'd left for the Space Academy, she'd given him a book as a gift. "Don't forget how to be human up there in space," she'd said. Why had Bora spent so much time on him? He was nothing to her, just a random kid. She could have closed her shop and retired. She could have ignored him and focused on customers with money. But she hadn't. She'd seen a lonely teenager and decided he was worth her time. That was it. No complex reason, just kindness. The Queen's presence rippled with something Taewon couldn't quite identify. Interest? Frustration? She was pulling up more memories now, not just his. Through the telepathic link, she was reaching into the collective human experience somehow. Taewon saw flashes of things he'd never personally witnessed. He saw a young woman in ancient times, carrying her elderly mother on her back through a war zone. The mother couldn't walk and they moved slowly. They could have moved faster if the daughter had left her behind. But she didn't. He saw a man in a flooded city diving into dark water again and again to rescue people trapped in their homes. The man wasn't a professional rescuer. He was just someone with a boat who decided that was enough reason to risk his life. He saw scientists working in laboratories, spending decades trying to cure diseases that affected only a few thousand people. There was no money in it, no fame. Just people who decided that a few thousand lives mattered enough to dedicate their entire careers to saving them. He saw teachers in poor neighborhoods, working long hours for low pay because they believed education mattered. He saw firefighters running into burning buildings. He saw nurses holding the hands of dying patients who had no family. He saw volunteers cleaning beaches, feeding homeless people, rescuing abandoned animals. None of it made sense from an efficiency standpoint. All of it was humanity. The Queen spoke again, and this time her voice in his head sounded strained. "I see what you are showing me, but I do not understand it. These actions you call lovely, we call wasteful. Why save the old when they will die soon anyway? Why risk your life for strangers? Why spend time on those who cannot repay you? Explain this to me." Taewon struggled to find words. How do you explain water to a fish? How do you explain color to the blind? Your Majesty, we don't do these things because they make sense. We do them because they feel right. Feel right? This is emotion. Emotion is unreliable. It clouds judgment. Maybe, Taewon admitted, but it also gives us reasons to keep going. It gives us purpose. The Queen was silent for a moment. Then she did something unexpected. She opened her own memories to Taewon. Suddenly he was seeing through her eyes. He was experiencing her world. He saw cities of crystal and light, buildings that touched the sky, technology that could reshape matter with a thought. Every citizen was enhanced, optimized, and perfect. There was no disease, no poverty, no suffering. Everyone was beautiful, intelligent, and capable. It should have been paradise, but it felt empty. Taewon could sense it through the Queen's memories. There was no warmth, no connection. People moved through their perfect lives like actors following a script. They formed partnerships based on genetic compatibility scores. They had children because algorithms said it was optimal. They pursued careers their enhancements were designed for. He saw children being tested at birth. Those who tested well were enhanced further. Those who tested poorly were discarded. Not killed, the Earthians weren't cruel, just sent away somewhere, made into something useful, optimized for efficiency. He saw relationships ending the moment they stopped being beneficial. He saw people achieving everything they wanted and then feeling nothing, because achievement without struggle meant nothing. He saw a civilization that had conquered every external challenge and was now dying from internal emptiness. The Queen pulled back from the connection. Taewon gasped, feeling like he'd been underwater and just reached the surface. She was looking at him with those swirling silver eyes, and now he understood what he saw in them. It wasn't just curiosity. It was desperation. "You see now," she said quietly, "we have everything. We are perfect, and we are dying. Not our bodies. Our spirits. Our purpose. We search the galaxy for meaning and find only more emptiness. Then we found humanity. Chaotic, inefficient, fragile, but alive in a way we are not. Tell me, human, what is your secret? How do you stay so vital despite your weaknesses?" Taewon took a shaky breath. He thought of Jia again. Her crooked smile, her scraped knees from falling while learning to ride a bicycle, her tears when she failed at something, Her joy when she finally succeeded after trying so hard. All of it imperfect, all of it beautiful. Maybe our weakness is our strength, he said slowly. Maybe struggling is what gives life meaning. Maybe we find things lovely because they're imperfect, not despite it. The Queen stared at him. The entire throne room was absolutely silent. Every being present was focused on this conversation, this moment, this idea that seemed to shake the foundations of everything they believed. The Queen gestured with one long, elegant hand. The throne room shifted around them. The walls became transparent, showing views of the Aerthian homeworld below. Taiwan saw cities that stretched across entire continents. Towers of light reached into the sky. Rivers of energy flowed between buildings. Ships moved through the air without making sound. Everything was clean, organized, and perfect. Look at what we have built, the Queen said. Her voice echoed in Taiwan's mind. 10,000 years of advancement. We have eliminated disease. We have conquered death. Our citizens can live for millennia if they choose. We have spread across 100 star systems. We have technologies your species cannot even dream of yet. We are, by every measure, successful. Taiwan watched the cities below. From up here they looked beautiful, but there was something strange about them. It took him a moment to figure out what it was. Nothing was random. Every building was placed with perfect precision. Every street formed geometric patterns. Even the parks looked planned down to individual trees. It was like looking at a painting instead of a real place. Your world is impressive, Your Majesty, Taiwan said carefully, but you do not like it. It wasn't a question. The Queen was still in his mind, reading his reactions. You find it cold, sterile, dead. I didn't say that. You did not need to. The Queen waved her hand again and the view changed. Now Taiwan was seeing inside one of the buildings. A classroom full of young Aerthians, their blue skin glowing softly. A teacher stood at the front, information flowing directly from their mind into the students' minds. No words, no discussion, just pure data transfer. It was perfectly efficient. Our children learn faster than yours, the Queen explained. They absorb knowledge directly. By the time they are 10 years old and you're counting, they know more than your greatest scholars. They are enhanced from birth. Genetic modifications ensure they are strong, intelligent, and beautiful. We have eliminated all defects. All weaknesses. The scene changed again. Now Taiwan saw a medical facility. An Aerthian infant lay on a table, surrounded by glowing instruments. Scientists worked around the baby, their hands moving through holographic displays. Numbers and charts appeared in the air above the child. This child tested poorly, the Queen said. Her voice was emotionless, stating facts. Their genetic markers show less than optimal intelligence. Their physical structure is adequate, but not exceptional. In your world, they would be raised anyway. Loved despite their limitations. But we are not wasteful. Watch what happens. The scientists injected something into the infant. The baby's body began to change, restructuring itself at the cellular level. Within minutes, the imperfections were gone. The child was now optimized. Perfect. The scientists nodded to each other, satisfied. Better, the Queen said. That child will now contribute more to our society. They will be happier. They will fulfill their potential. Taiwan felt sick watching it. And what if the modifications don't work? Then the child is repurposed. Their biomass is recycled. Their neural patterns are uploaded to serve as processing power for our systems. Nothing is wasted. All serve the Empire in some way. That's not better. That's horrifying. The Queen tilted her head. Why? The child feels no pain. They continue to exist in a new form. What is horrifying about efficiency? Because they're not just resources to be optimized. They're people. They have value just by existing. Value? What value does an imperfect being have? They consume resources. They slow progress. They introduce errors into our genetic lines. Your species clings to the weak and it makes you weak as a whole. The view changed again. Taiwan saw a couple standing in what looked like a matching center. Holographic displays showed their genetic profiles, compatibility scores, and projected offspring statistics. They looked at each other not with love but with analytical interest. They nodded. They were a good match. They would produce optimal children. They signed contracts through their neural interfaces and left, a couple now by algorithm. This is how we form partnerships, the Queen explained. No messy emotions. No irrational attachments. Pure compatibility. These two will produce excellent offspring. They will coexist efficiently. When their partnership no longer serves a purpose, they will separate without drama. This is civilized. This is sad, Taewon said before he could stop himself. The Queen's presence in his mind sharpened. Sad, explain. Where's the choice? Where's the chance? Where's the part where two people meet by accident and discover they like each other? Where's the struggle to make a relationship work? Where's the joy of choosing someone despite their flaws? Those things are inefficient. Why leave love to chance when we can optimize it? Because the chance is part of what makes it meaningful. Taewon thought of his own wife, Minji. They'd met during a transport malfunction. They'd been stuck in an elevator for 6 hours. They'd talked to pass the time. They'd argued about everything. They were completely different people. On paper, they were a terrible match. But something had clicked. They'd chosen each other. They'd worked through their differences. They'd built something together. That struggle, that choice, that was what made it real. The Queen was seeing these memories. Your wife is not genetically compatible with you. Your children have a higher chance of medical issues. You argue frequently. By our standards, your marriage is a failure. Yet you treasure it. Why? Because I chose her. And she chose me. And we keep choosing each other every day. That choice, that effort, that's what makes it lovely. The Queen was quiet for a long moment. The throne room around them shifted back to normal. The transparent walls became solid again. She stood there, this ancient, powerful being, and Taewon could feel confusion radiating from her through their mental link. I have ruled for 3,000 years, she said finally. I have conquered worlds. I have advanced our civilization beyond what our ancestors could imagine. I have achieved everything. And I feel nothing. Do you know what that is like, human? To have everything and feel empty? Taewon didn't know what to say. He could see it now in her memories that still leaked through their connection. Centuries of existence without purpose. Achievements that felt hollow. Relationships that were perfect on paper but meaningless in practice. An entire civilization that had optimized itself into a corner. Our birth rates are falling, the Queen continued. Why create new life when existence has no purpose? Our citizens live for millennia, but many choose to end their lives after only a few centuries. Not because they are in pain. Because they are bored. Because perfection leaves nothing to strive for. We have eliminated all external challenges, and now we are dying from internal emptiness. She moved closer to Taewon again. We have observed hundreds of civilizations. Most follow patterns. They grow, they advance, they optimize, they fade. But your species is different. You should have destroyed yourselves a dozen times already. Your inefficiency should have made you extinct. Yet you thrive. You expand. You remain vital. Why? What do you have that we lost? Taewon finally understood. This wasn't just curiosity. This was survival. The Earthian Empire was dying, and they were desperately searching for a cure. They'd found humanity and seen something they'd lost so long ago they didn't even have a name for it anymore. They'd seen people who struggled and somehow found joy in the struggle. Who failed and kept trying. Who loved imperfect things with perfect devotion. You want to know who is lovely to me? Taewon said slowly. You want to understand what drives us. But I don't think I can explain it in a way you'll understand. Not with words. Not even with this telepathy thing we're doing. Then help me understand, please. The word please coming from this powerful being was shocking. My empire is fading. My people are losing the will to exist. You humans have something we need. Something we lost when we became perfect. Tell me what it is. Taewon stood in that massive throne room, feeling the weight of every eye upon him. The Queen's telepathic presence pressed against his mind, waiting for an answer. An answer that might save or doom an entire civilization. No pressure at all. He thought about everything he'd seen. The Queen's perfect world. Her empty citizens. Her dying empire. Then he thought about home. About Earth. About humanity and all its messy, chaotic, beautiful imperfection. I want to tell you about someone, Taewon said finally. His name was Sungmin. The Queen's silver eyes swirled, showing interest. Through their mental link, Taewon felt her preparing to absorb his memories. He let them flow. Sungmin was a janitor at the Space Academy where I trained. He was nobody important. No genetic enhancements. No special talents. He wasn't particularly smart or strong. He was just a man who cleaned floors and emptied trash bins. By your standards, he was probably worthless. The memory took shape between them. Taewon saw the academy hallways again, 15 years younger. Sungmin was there, mopping the floor in his simple uniform. He was in his 60s, his hair going gray. His hands shook slightly from age. He moved slowly, methodically, making sure every corner was clean. I was 18 when I met him, Taewon continued. First week at the academy, I was terrified. Everyone else seemed smarter, faster, better than me. I was sitting in a hallway at midnight considering quitting. Sungmin found me there. The memory played out. Young Taewon sitting on the floor, head in his hands. Sungmin approaching with his mop and bucket. Can't sleep either? Sungmin had asked. His voice was kind. I'm just bad at this, young Taewon had replied. Everyone else is so much better. Sungmin had sat down beside him, setting his mop aside. You know how long I've worked here? 30 years. You know how many cadets I've seen quit? Hundreds. You know what they all had in common? They were all better than you. Young Taewon had looked up, confused. That's not encouraging. Sungmin had smiled. I'm not finished. They were all better than you, smarter than you, more talented than you, and they all quit. You know why? Because they expected to be perfect right away. When they struggled, they gave up. The ones who made it, the ones who became real officers, they weren't the best. They were the ones who kept trying. Being good at something doesn't make you special. Trying even when you're bad at something, that's what makes you remarkable. The Queen was experiencing this memory through Taewon's perspective. He felt her confusion. This janitor. He was wise? No, Taewon said. He was just kind. But I went back to that hallway every night for 2 weeks. Every night Sungmin was there cleaning. And every night we talked. He asked about my day. He listened to my problems. He told me stories about cadets from years past. He remembered all their names. Hundreds of students over 3 decades, and he remembered every single one. More memories flowed. Sungmin bringing Taewon coffee on late study nights. Sungmin congratulating him when he passed a difficult test. Sungmin attending Taewon's graduation ceremony, sitting in the back row, clapping louder than anyone else. Why did he care about you? The Queen asked. What did he gain? Nothing. That's the point. He didn't gain anything. He just saw someone who needed help and he helped. That's what humans do. We find loveliness in effort, in trying, in caring about things that don't benefit us. Taewon felt the Queen reaching deeper into his mind, pulling up more examples. He didn't resist. He showed her Daeun, a woman who'd lost her legs in an accident. She could have gotten prosthetics, could have been fixed. Instead, she'd learned to paint holding brushes in her mouth. Her paintings were clumsy at first. She spent years getting good. She could have taken the easy way. She chose the hard way. And her art was beautiful because you could see the struggle in every brushstroke. He showed her Youngjae, a musician who went deaf at 25. Instead of quitting, he'd learned to create music through vibration. He'd stand on stages and play instruments he couldn't hear, feeling the music through his bones. His concerts were strange, imperfect, and absolutely mesmerizing because everyone there knew how hard he was working to create something beautiful, despite impossible odds. He showed her Jiwoo, a teacher who survived a war. She'd seen terrible things. She could have given up on humanity. Instead, she dedicated her life to teaching children, trying to prevent the next war. She worked in poor neighborhoods where nobody appreciated her. She taught kids who didn't want to learn. She did it for 40 years. She died never knowing if she'd made a difference. But she'd tried. That was enough. The Queen's presence in Taewon's mind was overwhelming now. She was experiencing all of these memories at once. Hundreds of small human stories. People struggling. People failing. People trying anyway. It was nothing like her world of perfect efficiency. I don't understand, she said, and for the first time her voice sounded vulnerable. These people you call lovely, they are suffering. They are imperfect. They are inefficient. Why do you treasure them? Because they're trying, Taewon said. Because they're human. Because they could give up, but they don't. We don't love people for being perfect, Your Majesty. We love them for being real. He thought about his daughter again. Gia with her messy hair and her scraped knees and her constant questions. She wasn't a perfect child. She was clumsy. She got frustrated easily. She made mistakes. But watching her learn to tie her shoes, seeing her face when she finally got it right after 50 failures, that was the most beautiful thing in the world. Your daughter is small and weak, the Queen observed. She knows nothing. She contributes nothing to your society yet. By our standards, she is worthless. Why do you treasure her? Because she's mine, Taewon said simply. Because I watched her struggle to take her first steps. Because I heard her try to say my name 50 times before she got it right. Because she fails at things and tries again. Because she's growing and learning and becoming herself. The struggle is what makes it meaningful. The Queen was silent for a long time. Taewon could feel her processing this information, trying to fit it into her worldview. It didn't fit. It couldn't fit. Her entire civilization was built on the opposite principle. You are saying, the Queen said slowly, that limitations create meaning. That struggle creates value. That imperfection is not a flaw but a feature. I'm saying that life without challenge isn't really life. It's just existence. We humans are weak compared to you. We get sick. We age, we die. We make mistakes. But those weaknesses force us to support each other. They force us to try harder. They force us to find meaning in small victories. You eliminated all of that. You became perfect. And perfection has no reason to improve. No reason to struggle, no reason to care. The throne room was absolutely silent. Every being present was focused on this conversation. Taewon could feel the telepathic network lighting up as the Queen shared their conversation with her court. Advisors were arguing, debating, struggling to understand this alien concept. You find lovely those who struggle, the Queen said. Those who fail but try again. Those who are weak but persist. This is what drives your species. This is your secret. It's not really a secret. It's just who we are. The Queen looked at him with those swirling silver eyes, and Taewon saw something he hadn't expected. Tears. She was crying. He didn't know Earthians could cry. Silver liquid ran down her glowing blue cheeks, and her voice in his mind was breaking. We lost this, she whispered. Somewhere in our 10,000 years of advancement, we optimized away our humanity. And now we're dying because we have nothing left to live for. You with all your weakness have what we need. The will to struggle, the courage to fail, the ability to love imperfect things. How do we get it back? The Queen waved her hand again and the throne room transformed. The walls became screens showing data, charts, and statistics. Numbers appeared in the air around them, glowing with soft light. Taewon didn't understand most of it, but he could read the trends. Everything was going down. This is the truth I have hidden from the galaxy, the Queen said. Her voice was heavy with exhaustion. The Earthian Empire is dying. Not from war. Not from disease. Not from any external threat. We are dying from within. The charts showed population numbers dropping over centuries, birth rates falling, death rates rising, but not from natural causes. The word voluntary termination appeared again and again in the data. Our citizens are choosing death, the Queen explained. Not because they are in pain. Not because they are ill. Because they see no reason to continue existing. When you achieve everything, when you become perfect, when you eliminate all struggle, what is left? What reason is there to wake up each day? Taewon stared at the numbers. Millions of Earthians choosing to end their lives. Not suicide in the human sense. No desperation or despair. Just a calm, logical decision that existence had become pointless. It was horrifying in its rationality. We thought it was a temporary problem, the Queen continued. A few eccentric individuals. But it has been growing for 1,000 years. Our best minds have studied it. Our philosophers have debated it. Our scientists have researched it. Nothing works. We save them from death and they simply choose it again later. Because the problem is not in their bodies or their brains. The problem is in their souls. New images appeared. The Queen was showing Taewon something from their archives. Records of other civilizations. Dozens of them, hundreds, all advanced species that had reached high levels of technology. We have explored the galaxy for 10 millennia, the Queen said. We have found the ruins of countless civilizations. All of them followed the same path. They grew, they advanced, they optimized, and then they vanished. Not destroyed, not conquered. They simply stopped. They achieved perfection, and then faded away like morning mist. Taewon saw images of empty cities on alien worlds. Beautiful architecture left to decay. Advanced technology gathering dust. Species that had reached the stars and then just given up. It was like looking at a graveyard of ambition. This one, the Queen pointed to a planet covered in crystal towers. They lived for 10,000 years without aging. They eliminated all disease. They became perfect. Then, over the course of a single century, they stopped having children. They stopped creating art. They stopped doing anything. Within 200 years, they were extinct. Not a single violent death. They just lost the will to exist. She showed him another. This species eliminated all emotion. They believed emotion was inefficient. They became purely logical. Within 5 centuries, they had disappeared. Perfect logic gave them no reason to continue. More images, more dead civilizations. Each one had found a different path to the same end. Perfection followed by extinction. It was a pattern repeated across the galaxy, across millions of years, a universal truth. Species that eliminated struggle eliminated their reason to exist. We thought we would be different, the Queen said. We believed we were wise enough to avoid this trap. But we were wrong. We are following the same path. Our birth rates are falling. Our citizens are choosing death. Our culture is becoming stagnant. We have centuries left, maybe a millennium if we are fortunate. But unless something changes, we will join the graveyard of extinct perfection. Taewon felt overwhelmed. Why are you telling me this? Because you are our hope. The Queen's presence in his mind intensified. When we discovered humanity, we were fascinated. You should have destroyed yourselves, your world wars, your diseases, your inefficiency. You had every reason to go extinct. Yet you survived. More than survived. You thrived. We have observed you for 50 years trying to understand why. And now I know. You have what we lost. The ability to find meaning in struggle. She brought up new images. Human history. Wars and disasters and failures. But also between every tragedy, humans helping each other. Rebuilding. Trying again. Creating art from pain. Finding hope in darkness. It was messy and chaotic and somehow beautiful. You are not advanced by our standards, the Queen continued. You barely have faster-than-light travel. Your medical technology is primitive. Your lifespans are short, but you have something infinitely more valuable. You have the will to keep trying. You find meaning in effort. You love imperfect things. You struggle beautifully. Taewon didn't know what to say. The weight of what she was telling him was crushing. An entire empire, thousands of years old, spread across hundreds of worlds, was looking to humanity for salvation. It was absurd. It was terrifying. It was impossible. I cannot save your empire, Taewon said finally. I'm just one person. Humanity is just one species. We don't have answers. We just survive day by day. But you do survive. That is more than we can say. The Queen moved closer. I have called you here not as a diplomat, not as a representative of Earth. I called you here because I need to understand. Before my empire fades completely, I need to know what we lost. What is this thing humans call love? What is this value you place on imperfection? How do you find meaning in struggle? She opened her memories again, but this time she showed Taewon something personal. He saw through her eyes, living her life. 3,000 years of existence. She'd seen the birth of stars. She'd ruled countless worlds. She'd achieved things humans couldn't imagine. And she felt nothing. He experienced her days, each one the same as the last. She woke perfectly refreshed. She worked efficiently. She made optimal decisions. She interacted with other Earthians in perfectly logical ways. She went to sleep satisfied with her efficiency. And every single day was meaningless, empty. A perfect routine with no purpose. She showed him a moment from 1,000 years ago. She'd been standing on a balcony looking at the stars. She'd ruled for 2,000 years at that point. She'd accomplished everything. And she'd thought very clearly, why am I still here? What is the point of continuing? She'd almost chosen voluntary termination that night. The only thing that stopped her was duty. Her empire needed a ruler. So she continued, for 1,000 more years. But the question never left her. Why continue? What was the point of perfect existence? I am 3,000 years old, the Queen said, pulling back from the memory sharing. I have lived longer than your entire civilization. I have seen everything, done everything, achieved everything. And I envy you, human. You with your short life and your limited abilities. I envy you because you still have reasons to get out of bed each morning. You still find things lovely. You still feel alive. Taewon felt tears in his own eyes now. This powerful ancient being was looking at him with such desperate longing. She'd given up everything for perfection and now realized perfection was worthless. She'd traded meaning for efficiency and found that efficiency without meaning was death. Can it be taught? The Queen asked. This ability to find meaning in struggle, this love of imperfection, can we learn it? Can we get it back? Or is it something that once lost cannot be recovered? Taewon thought about it. Could you teach someone to value struggle who had never struggled? Could you teach someone to love imperfection who had only known perfection? Could you give meaning to someone who had optimized away all challenge? I don't know, he admitted. But maybe we can try. The Queen's eyes brightened slightly. Try, yes, that is a very human word. To try without knowing if you will succeed. To struggle without guarantee of victory. That is what we have forgotten. How to try. Taewon took a deep breath. The Queen was waiting for an answer, her silver eyes fixed on him with desperate hope. Behind her, the court of advisors watched silently. The fate of an empire hung on his next words. No pressure at all. Your Majesty, he began carefully. I think the problem is that you're asking the wrong question. You want to know if we can teach you to value struggle. But struggle isn't something you learn. It's something you experience. And you can't experience it if you've eliminated it. The Queen tilted her head. Explain. Taewon thought about how to make her understand. Let me tell you about another person. Her name was Da-eun. She was an athlete, a runner, one of the best in her country. She was training for the Olympics when she had an accident. A car hit her. She lost both her legs. Through their mental connection, Taewon shared the memory. He hadn't known Da-eun personally, but he'd seen a documentary about her years ago. The images were burned into his mind. Taeyeon in the hospital crying. Daeun learning to use prosthetics. Daeun falling again and again as she tried to walk. She could have gotten advanced prosthetics, Taewon continued, ones that would let her run again. But she couldn't afford them. So you know what she did? She learned to paint. She held brushes in her mouth. It took her 3 years to get good enough to sell a painting. 3 years of trying something she'd never done before, using a method that seemed impossible. The Queen watched the memories. Daeun's early paintings were clumsy, shaky lines made with a mouth-held brush. But slowly over months and years they got better. The lines became steadier. The images became clearer. The paintings became beautiful. Why did she not simply end her suffering? The Queen asked. In our world, she would have chosen voluntary termination. Life without running was not worth living for a runner. But that's the thing, Taewon said. She found a new reason to live. She discovered something about herself she never knew. She was an artist. The accident didn't end her life. It changed her life. The struggle of learning to paint with her mouth, that struggle gave her purpose. Every painting was proof that she'd overcome something impossible. He showed her more examples. Young Jae, the deaf musician, he couldn't hear his own music, but he could feel it through vibrations. He'd stand on stage playing instruments, feeling the rhythm through his bones. His concerts were different from other musicians. They were raw, primal, visceral. People came from across the country to watch him play because you could see the effort in every movement. You could feel his struggle in every note. He could have gotten implants, Taewon explained. Technology to restore his hearing. But he chose not to. He said the deafness forced him to understand music in a new way. To feel it instead of just hearing it. The limitation became his strength. The Queen's presence in Taewon's mind was processing this information, trying to understand it. These people turned their weaknesses into strengths. They found meaning in their limitations. But they did not choose these limitations. They were forced upon them. Are you saying we should hurt ourselves? Damage ourselves to create struggle? No, Taewon said quickly. That's not the point. The point is that struggle comes from limitations. Pain comes from failure. Meaning comes from overcoming challenges. You eliminated all of those things. You removed pain, failure, struggle, and limitation. And in doing so, you removed meaning. He thought about how to explain it better. Imagine music. Perfect music generated by an algorithm. Every note optimal. Every rhythm precise. It would be technically perfect. But would it move you? Would it make you feel anything? Or would it just be noise? The Queen was silent. Taewon continued. Now imagine imperfect music. A child learning piano. They hit wrong notes. Their timing is off. But you can hear them trying. You can hear them improving. Each mistake makes the eventual success more meaningful. The imperfection is what makes it beautiful. He showed her another memory. Jiwoo, the teacher. She'd survived a terrible war in her youth. She'd seen friends die. She'd gone hungry. She'd lived through horrors that would have broken most people. After the war ended, she could have done anything. She could have pursued a comfortable life. But she'd chosen to teach. She taught in poor neighborhoods, Taewon said. Places where kids had nothing. Where violence was common. Where most teachers refused to go. She worked there for 40 years. Low pay, no recognition, difficult students. Why do you think she did it? I do not know, the Queen admitted. Because she'd seen what happens when people give up on each other. She'd lived through a war started because people forgot how to care. She spent her entire life trying to teach children to be better than the generation that came before. She died never knowing if she succeeded, but she tried. That trying, that effort despite not knowing the outcome, that's what made her life meaningful. The Queen's mental presence felt heavy now, weighed down by understanding. You are saying that meaning comes from uncertainty, from not knowing if you will succeed, from having to try despite the possibility of failure. Yes, Taewon said. Your empire eliminated uncertainty. Every Aerthian knows they will succeed because you only allow optimal outcomes. Every child knows they will be perfect because you modify them until they are. Every partnership works because algorithms ensure compatibility. There's no risk, no chance, no possibility of failure, and without the possibility of failure, success means nothing. The throne room was absolutely quiet. Taewon could feel the telepathic network lighting up as the Queen shared their conversation with countless Aerthians across the empire. Millions of minds processing this idea, this strange foreign concept that imperfection might be valuable. But surely, one of the advisors spoke up for the first time, surely it is better to be certain of success than to risk failure. Why would anyone choose to struggle when they could choose perfection? Taewon turned to face the advisor, a being of geometric light. Because perfection is boring. Because certainty is meaningless. Because the things we work hardest for are the things we value most. My daughter Gia is learning to read right now. It's hard for her. She gets frustrated. She makes mistakes. But when she finally reads her first book on her own, that will be the greatest achievement of her young life. Not because reading is special, but because she struggled for it. He looked back at the Queen. You gave your people everything. Perfect bodies, perfect minds, perfect lives. And in doing so, you took away their ability to achieve anything. They don't work for success. Success is given to them. They don't overcome challenges. Challenges are removed before they appear. They don't grow or change or improve. They're born optimized and stay that way forever. What reason do they have to get up in the morning? The Queen was crying again, silver tears falling down her glowing face. We thought we were being kind. We thought eliminating suffering was good. We thought perfection was the goal. But we were wrong. We destroyed ourselves with kindness. We optimized ourselves into extinction. Taewon felt sympathy for her. She'd ruled for 3,000 years, always trying to do what was best for her people. And only now, when it was almost too late, did she realize that best and good were not the same thing. Can we change? The Queen asked. Can we go back? Can we reintroduce struggle, limitation, imperfection? Or is it too late? Taewon thought about it. Could you teach someone who'd lived in perfection for millennia to value imperfection? Could you convince someone who'd never struggled that struggle had value? Could you make someone who'd achieved everything care about achieving anything? I don't know if you can go back, he said honestly. But maybe you can go forward. Maybe you can choose to be imperfect. Maybe you can choose to struggle. It won't be the same as never being perfect in the first place, but it might be enough. The Queen looked at him for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She smiled. It was a sad smile, but it was real. Choose to struggle. Choose imperfection. Choose uncertainty. These are very human ideas. And perhaps if we are very fortunate, they might save us. 6 months had passed since Taewon's meeting with Queen Velcia. 6 months since that conversation that shook an empire. He stood now on a transport ship, looking out at a planet that hadn't existed before. New Haven, they called it. A strange name for a strange experiment. The planet was small, barely habitable by Aerthian standards. The atmosphere was breathable but not optimal. The temperature varied too much. There were storms and seasons and unpredictable weather. By every measure, it was an inferior world. That was exactly why the Queen had chosen it. Commander Taewon, a voice said behind him. He turned to see an Aerthian approaching. She was young by their standards, only 200 years old. Her blue skin glowed softly, but not as brightly as most Aerthians. There was something different about her. I am Rinva. I volunteered for the New Haven project. I wanted to thank you before we begin. Thank me? Taewon was surprised. I didn't do anything. This was the Queen's decision. You showed us we were dying, Rinva said simply. Most of us knew something was wrong. We just didn't know what. You gave us a name for our emptiness, and more importantly, you showed us a possible cure. Taewon looked back at the planet. You know this might not work, right? You might give up your enhancements, accept mortality, and still feel empty. There's no guarantee. I know, Rinva said, and she smiled. It was a genuine smile, not the practiced expression Earthians usually wore. That's what makes it worth trying. The uncertainty, the risk. For the first time in my 2 centuries of existence, I'm doing something where I don't know the outcome. It's terrifying. It's wonderful. The transport ship landed on New Haven an hour later. Taewon stepped out onto rough ground. The city being built here was nothing like the crystal perfection of Aerthian worlds. The buildings were simple, functional, and slightly crooked. Human and Aerthian workers moved together, carrying materials, arguing about designs, making mistakes, and fixing them. He saw his daughter Jia among a group of children. She was teaching young Aerthians how to play. It was strange watching children who'd lived for decades learning how to play from a 5-year-old human. But Jia was patient. When they fell, she showed them how to get back up. When they failed at a game, she showed them how to laugh about it and try again. They're learning to be children, a familiar voice said. Taewon turned to see Queen Velsha. She looked different. Her skin still glowed, but dimmer now. She'd reduced her enhancements. She was allowing herself to age naturally for the first time in millennia. There were small lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. Your Majesty, Taewon said, bowing slightly. I didn't expect you to come here personally. Where else would I be? The Queen replied. My empire is experimenting with mortality, with imperfection, with struggle. How can I ask my people to do what I am unwilling to do myself? She looked at her hands. They trembled slightly. I reduced my neural enhancements last month. My thoughts are slower now. Less precise. Yesterday I forgot someone's name. It was frustrating. It was also the first interesting thing that has happened to me in centuries. They walked through the settlement together. Everywhere Taewon looked, he saw evidence of the great experiment. Earthians and humans working side by side. An Aerthian scientist named Kelvin was arguing with a human engineer named Minji about how to build a water system. They were both wrong in different ways, but together they were figuring it out. We are learning to fail, the Queen said, watching them. It is harder than you might think. For 3,000 years I have made optimal decisions. Now I make imperfect decisions and have to live with the consequences. It is uncomfortable, but it is also real. For the first time in longer than I can remember, my choices matter because they might be wrong. They reached a medical facility. Inside, Taewon saw something that would have been impossible on any Earthian world 6 months ago. An Aerthian woman was giving birth naturally without enhancements or modifications. The baby would not be optimized. It would be whatever it was born to be. The woman was in pain, crying out. Human doctors were helping her. Aerthian doctors were watching, learning. That is Salen, the Queen said quietly. She was one of the first to volunteer. She and her partner chose to have a child the human way, without genetic modification, without enhancement. Their child will be imperfect. It might have health issues. It might not be intelligent. It might be weak. And they are choosing this anyway. Why? Taewon asked, though he thought he knew the answer. Because a child you struggle for is more precious than a child handed to you perfect, the Queen said. Because raising an imperfect child will give their lives purpose. Because not knowing what their child will become makes every day an adventure. They are trading certainty for meaning. It is the most irrational, inefficient, beautiful thing I have ever witnessed. The baby was born an hour later. Taewon heard the crying from outside the medical facility. He saw Salen holding her child, tears streaming down her face. The baby was small and wrinkled and imperfect, and Salen looked at it like it was the most precious thing in the universe. Our first naturally born child in 4,000 years, the Queen said softly. The beginning of a new Aerthian civilization, or the end of the old one. Perhaps both. Days turned into weeks. Taewon stayed on New Haven, helping where he could. He watched as thousands of Aerthians chose to give up their perfection. Some reduced their enhancements partially. Others removed them entirely, accepting full mortality. Each one had different reasons, but they all shared one thing. They were tired of emptiness and willing to risk pain for meaning. Not everyone succeeded. Some Aerthians tried life without enhancements and hated it. They couldn't handle the uncertainty, the struggle, the possibility of failure. They went back to the Empire proper. choosing comfortable emptiness over uncomfortable meaning. The Queen let them go without judgment. Choice, she said, was the whole point. But many stayed. Many thrived. Taiwan watched them slowly, painfully learning to be imperfect. An Earthian artist choosing to paint with real brushes instead of neural interfaces, accepting that his art would be less technically perfect, but more emotionally real. An Aerthian teacher learning to be patient with students who learned at different speeds. An Aerthian farmer growing food that sometimes failed, sometimes thrived, and was always unpredictable. Minji, Taiwan's wife, arrived on New Haven with other human advisors. She partnered with Calvin on various projects. They argued constantly. Their partnership should have failed by any logical measure. But they balanced each other. Her intuition covered his overthinking. His precision covered her impulsiveness. Together they were creating things neither could have created alone. "This is what we lost," the Queen said one evening. She and Taiwan were sitting on a hill watching the sunset. New Haven had spectacular sunsets because the atmosphere was imperfect. The ability to create something greater than ourselves through imperfect cooperation. We optimized for individual excellence and lost collective meaning. "Is it working?" Taiwan asked. "Is your empire healing?" The Queen was quiet for a moment. "Yes and no. Birth rates are rising among those who chose imperfection. Voluntary terminations are decreasing. But the majority of Earthians think we are insane. They see New Haven as a regression, not progress. They believe we are choosing suffering for no reason. The empire is dividing. Some want to preserve perfection. Some want controlled imperfection. A few like me want to start over entirely. What do you want?" Taiwan asked. The Queen looked at her hands again. The trembling was more pronounced now. She was aging faster than she had in millennia. In another century, she might actually die of old age. "I want to feel alive again, and I do. Every morning, I wake up uncertain about what the day will bring. Every evening, I feel satisfied because I struggled through challenges instead of optimizing past them. Last week, I failed to solve a problem. I actually failed. It took me 3 days to fix my mistake, and when I finally succeeded, I felt joy, real joy, for the first time in 3,000 years. She turned to look at Taiwan. "You asked me months ago who is lovely to me. I did not understand the question then, but I understand it now. Lovely is that mother holding her imperfect baby. Lovely is those children learning to fail and try again. Lovely is watching my people struggle to become less than perfect and more than empty. Lovely is this sunset that is beautiful because it is temporary and unpredictable. Lovely is feeling alive even though being alive means eventually dying." Taiwan smiled. "You're learning to be human?" "No," the Queen corrected gently. "I am learning to be Earthian again. We were not always perfect. We were not always empty. Long ago, before we began our optimization, we must have felt things, struggled with things, loved imperfect things. We forgot how. You humans reminded us. Now we must remember for ourselves." Years passed. New Haven grew from an experiment to a thriving colony. More Earthians came choosing imperfection. Some succeeded. Some failed. All of them were trying. The galaxy watched with curiosity and concern. Other dying civilizations sent representatives, wondering if this strange solution might work for them too. Taiwan eventually returned to Earth, but he visited New Haven often. Each time he came back, he saw changes. The settlement growing, new children being born without enhancements,